Hello and welcome back for match 3 with Burning Oath. We are on the play and have Oath of Druids but no Forbidden Orchard. However, we have the ability to cast Wheel of Fortune on turn 2. So we're going to keep this one, and given that we have action and the mana to cast it, I think that we want to lead off with Duress over Ponder. And see what our opponent is up to see whether or not we would prefer to Oath or Wheel. So, opponent kicks off with Mox Ruby Blue Fetchland. Sensei's Divining Top. Okay. So, we can ponder, but that would be all we do in this turn if that's our line. Our opponent has Sensei's Divining Top, so they're not obligated to commit a creature to the board. If we wheel, we get rid of Desire, Ponder, and Demonic, all of which are like phenomenal cards, so I'm not super interested in that. Like, we also wheel our opponent into a 7-card hand, which doesn't seem great. So I'd like to spend a few more resources getting rid of theirs. So I actually do think I want to Ponder. So we don't really want this Mox Pearl, it doesn't do a lot for us, but City and Burning Wish both do a good amount. We would not like to shuffle. We would like to play a card that produces any of the 4 colors that are represented in our hand. And we're like very short on mana, which has been happening a lot in these games. We'd like to, like, my intuition is that our opponent is playing the Night's Whisper deck that we played last week. Just because, like, relatively few decks play Sensei's Divining Top. But regardless, like, I think that they're playing a blue control deck. Like, control-oriented deck rather than, like, tempo deck. So I think we're going to end up dealing ourselves 4 damage. Casting Demonic Tutor. And I think getting Ancestral. Just forcing our opponent to have to counter this. So, like, our endgame is Burning Wish for Yawgmoth's Well. So they Snapcaster a Misstep, which is pretty good for them. But it means that we get to slam our Oath on top of their Snapcaster. And mana base is just so painful, though. Like, I think that's what makes me so uncomfortable about this deck, is just like how readily it deals itself damage and how much it actually wants to use damage or its life as a resource. Oh boy. How much more mana do they have? So they Time Walk, draw Yawgmoth's Will. Lotus is pretty good. So Will, Mystical, Time Walk. Yeah, like we just have a bunch of clunkers in our deck. It might just be that I'm getting like super imbalanced draws, but so they Mystical for recall and then draw it with top. Mystical for Tinker. Draw it with top, tinker away their Ruby. Tinker for Blightsteel. And then they have another turn after this. That's like pretty sick. Okay, yeah, we're dead. Alright. So, our opponent playing ye old blue control deck. So, not really interested in cutting any of the mana, given that we seem to have run pretty bad on drawing it. I think we do want to cut a rebuild for a Grudge. We can always like wish for balance as a way to beat Blightsteel. I think Ancient Tomb might just be a cut here. This is like a super land light deck, is another thing. But yeah, I think Silence is important to beat like top plus counterspell when we're like leaning on duresses. So what's the card we cut? Oh, probably Windfall. Windfall does not seem especially impressive. Yeah, this hand is ugly. Doesn't do a whole lot. Like, we can ponder into artifacts and have Tinker, but like our mana is flimsy. I'm just scared of mulliganing into a 6-carder that has no lands, and we have Ponder to like dig us out of this mana issue, but this feels very much like a Tep's deck in that yeah, I think we have to shuffle this up. And now that we can cast Duress, I think that it's important that we get that on the stack. Ocean Thief, Jesus. Okay. Well, they can merchant scroll for recall, I think. I would rather that than them tinker on turn 2. Actually, no, I think I would rather just cut off merchant scroll and leave them with tinker and ocean thief. Ugh. So, not only do we not draw a land, we don't draw... So our opponent doesn't cast Tinker, which is fascinating. So I think we just Burning Wish for balance here. And... okay. So they're going to vamp for force, I'm guessing. Force or drain. It sort of doesn't really matter. Like, the threat of balance is going to keep them from tinkering for Blightsteel, which is my primary concern since that kills us. But I also understand how, like, I think you just vamp for force and cast Tinker. Like, force pitching Ocean Thief. Yeah. This seems like fairly solved, like we're dead. So they didn't get force, or they boarded out their Blightsteel. Either way, we get another turn. So, if we went Dark Ritual, Tinker, we lose both of our things and can't really... yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I'm still just fine waiting this out. Our hand is, as ever, incredibly clunky, but we aren't really doing anything right now. And we can desire for 3. Actually, we can silence them and... That's fine. Flusterstorm is exactly what I was afraid of. Oh, I did not mean to click OK there. Okay, cool. So Jesus Christ. Okay, so second Flusterstorm to take out all of the Desire copies instead of having 1 mana floating, which is a little awkward. Gonna chalk that one up to Moto's Interface. Okay. So not paying, not paying, not paying, not paying, not paying. So basic plan here is float our mana, cast Tinker, sacrifice Mana Crypt, have them drain it, cast Balance, and put them on. Okay, well, they certainly drew a lot of counterspells there. Which I can't fault them for. But Jesus. They tinkered for top. Okay, so they definitely boarded out Blightsteel. We are going to need a serious miracle to get out of this. Notion Thief cuts off Memory Jar, which is adorable. So, we're going to pass back. Probably just lose to this Notion Thief. Jesus. They drew quite well after we duressed them. I will give them that. Okay. We're dead. This has certainly been rough, but we have one more match to see how things go. I'll be right back.